Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Mr. President, greetings. So, a short introductory word. Okay. Well, today I've had a lot of introductory words, in fact. But I'll start with the word of thanks. Thanks to the representatives of media, to journalists. And I think that what you've done over this year is very important. I'd like to express words of gratitude to these invincible journalists. Really, you've done a lot for the strengths of our nations. The armed forces of Ukraine was fighting, the whole people, the citizens of Ukraine was fighting, and you did your own role. The same goes to the representatives of our foreign partners. So I'm confident that you fully recognize what you've done for the victory. All this feeling will come. So big words of gratitude to you for speaking about Ukraine, for the fact that the whole world is not forgetting about Ukraine. This allows us to remain strong, to remain invincible and unbreakable. So this is already a year of invincibility, so big thanks to you. Big words of gratitude to your colleagues that are unfortunately no longer with us because they've died in Ukraine. We have people like that, representatives of your very important profession. So I guess it would be fair to recognize all those people with a minute of silence to those that we all remember. It's important to us. I think it's important to everyone. Now, I think we can start talking. Yes, don't forget to raise your tablets and introduce yourselves when. So, Christian, please, CNN.
Okay. Mr. President, thank you for taking this question. Can we get him down? Mr. President, I'm interested in the timeline. Today, on the anniversary, you spoke to your own forces and you called for victory within this year. You have heard the Western friends, your partners, talk about as long as it takes. You know that the Russian leader believes that time is on his side. Why do you think that it's possible by the end of the year, and how do you assess the meaning of as long as it takes from your Ukrainian perspective?
Thank you for this question. I really want, and I think that every single partner, everyone, will remain strong, will remain just as a fist. If all of our partners are united for the sake of our victory, because that's a victory of values, if all of them will remain committed to their words, to their time frames, and that's not going to be just talking, but we've already shown ourselves as strong partners, and there's evidence to that. So should all of us do this important homework? The bodyguard has... Okay, so if we'll fulfill our tasks, then we'll definitely have this victory. I'm confident that we'll have this victory. So And I hope this will happen this year. We have everything to have it this year. We have France, we have diplomacy, we have you. We have combined everything against this wave of invaders. I think not a single country in the world can withstand on its own something against this war. I think only the United States would be capable to do that, but fortunately they don't have neighbors like that. There's just a couple of countries like that in the world. And Ukraine is facing this war not alone. We have friends. We make sure this aggression, this war would not continue anywhere else. We clearly understand what the Putin wants, what Kremlin wants. We understand what the military political leadership want. So it's important for everyone to focus, to stay working in their own places, and that's it. And then we'll have victory, because the truth, the righteous, is on our side, and the children that we love. And it's so horrible when we are losing them in the battlefield, around the battlefield. But they, Russians, they have countless of victims and casualties. That's their choice. Now, ICTV, Oksana. Good afternoon, Mr. President. First, thank you for your example of resilience, invincibility, and belief. We all believe in the victory, but now a lot of international experts are telling that we have a war of exhaustion, and not a single party would have resources to have an victory, clear victory, and then there will be a negotiation. So how do these negotiations look like? What's the ultimate victory for Ukraine looks like? I'm not thinking theoretically about how those negotiations could take place. We make very specific steps. Ukraine has initiated the peace formula at G20, although we would really like to have it G19 and not G20 in the world. So we've briefed everyone on the peace formula, how we see that. And then there's the outcome of what Russia has done here and how it has an impact not only on our security, because there are different crises caused by Russia's aggressive steps. As you know, the occupation of the nuclear power plant in Zaporizhia, and then the blocking of the sea and all the chains of supply as part of the food security. You know all of those aspects. So what else can I tell you? We've offered the steps, and today we can see some interest in fulfilling this peace formula and supporting that. And I'd like to express words of gratitude to the country, because yesterday, or in fact today night, 141 countries has supported our peace initiative at the General Assembly. So the next step would be to engage as much as possible states for the first summit. I want really this summit to be as much fruitful as possible, so that we would have this summit conducted in a place, in a country that would be able to host as much countries of the world as possible. I'm working with our partners, with the team, in order to make sure that not only the strategic partners that are supporting us from the first days to be there at the Peace Formula Summit. And we're working hard to have representatives from different continents. We're working hard to have Latin America represented at this Global Peace Formula Summit, and so that there would be representatives of the African continent, so they would be engaged in this summit as well. We're also, frankly speaking, I would like to have India, I would like to have China participating. That's true. Our task is to engage as much as possible and to show the whole world that here's the respect to the territorial integrity, to UN Charter, to anyone's right to live. And the more countries will engage, the more support we will have. And we have developed the peace formula in a way which is very democratic. So it's a very clear step. So in order to reduce the risks among the countries supporting us, I mean, any country can support like a single point of this peace formula. They could support a nuclear safety, the environmental safety, and you know how many mines are there around the territory of Ukraine. That's why there is a lot of steps that we've offered. And there's also kind of a step that means the bringing of peace, because we need the security guarantees. And this is something we need, like a security package for Ukraine, for Ukrainians. And already we can see that this is the war that has a very significant impact. So security guarantees for the whole Europe. So when there is this fulfillment and then there is this respect to the international law and to the ordinary people and to the people of Ukraine. So if that would be fulfilled, then we'll get a diplomatic kind of an end of this war. But until that moment, we need to fulfill all these points of respect. Thank you. Now, the Mexican TV first row, please.
Sorry, Mr. President, you were mentioning the resolution in the United Nations, the more than 140 countries that voted, demanding that Russian forces leave Ukraine immediately and without conditions. What do you say to the countries, the minority, that didn't support that resolution, that voted with Russia against it, or that decided to ignore it?
Ви знаєте, напевно, щоб
Now, in order to understand the war, the consequences and the losses as the result of the war, because you're not only losing the territory, but you're losing people, leaving people. And if you're not at war, if you haven't ever lost anyone, then it's hard for you to understand what's happening. What sort of pain is that for everyone around you? And it's hard to spread this information. And this is why we are working every day in order anyone to understand the consequences of the war, not through having this war, because it's painful, it's a weak position, because you're somewhere there. You're saying that we're not sure that in this way, but in what way? Should you definitely have a war with torturing, with rapes? Should you need to have it in every house of the war so that the people would finally understand the consequences of this bloody war? And then this big sick leadership of this Russian Federation, then there is this journalism to have this information being spread. It's hard to get this information to those countries that are voting against it. But still, we are working. There's 141 countries who voted in favor of that. There is this support to territorial integrity and sovereignty. So there's the answer. How these countries are, what sort of attitude do they have? So there's an answer in this support. Yes, they have to withdraw from your sovereign territory. Now, how do we work with other countries? We do work. And I believe that Ukraine really needs to make steps forward, like towards the African countries. I think we worked not at a sufficient level. We didn't pay sufficient attention to the African countries. That is why we have a special program initiated by Ukraine. We are increasing the number of embassies in the region, and then look at the Grain from Ukraine initiative and other initiatives on food security. So this is what you need to do. A daily investments in peace. I think we wasted that time for many years since the beginning of our independence, and that is why currently we are fighting for our independence. And that's not a coincidence. We didn't have a strong fist of partners before the war, and that's right. But now we have it. But we're still lacking a number of individuals at this fist of common support. So, and I'm talking about the African continent, the Latin America, it's also very important, and I would really like to have a conference and a meeting, or rather a summit, with the Latin American countries and Ukraine, and it's very difficult for me to leave outside of Ukraine, but I would go to this meeting to tell their media, to tell their society, like, I'm ready to step forward. Our diplomats are making this step forwards. We're ready to work round the clock. If we'll get more hours in the daytime, we will do that. So this is how you would need to work 30 years. Unfortunately, it was the war that made us work so effectively, but nobody would have expected something like that out of neighboring country of Russia, that you would have something like that from Russia. There's this just willingness to destroy us completely, utterly. And that's why it's not a correction of mistakes. I'd like to say that I don't have any questions to anyone. I don't want to deal with that part of the past. I'm looking at the future. We need the total support of the war, and we will be victorious. We're working on that. And that dialogue is absolutely fair. This is a dialogue with many countries. We've worked on the unification of the European countries, and there's not only the EU member nations, but other countries, countries with different status, with neutral status, and we've worked in order to change this neutrality into the non-neutral status to war. This is also very important. We've worked on this every day, a lot. You have worked on that, and the armed forces have worked on that, because the victory is on the battlefield. That gives confidence. Nobody likes losers, however hard it might sound, but that's the truth. Everyone wants to be victorious, and everyone has to work, like inside the country and outside the country. That's the only way to victory.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dear colleagues, Yalta European strategist, Sir Jeffrey Nice, do you have a question, maybe? First row.
Do I need a microphone?
Yes, you do.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, those fighting for your country, led by you and you, have put you on moral peaks, not just high ground, from which you can make requests or demands of the Western world, whose methods of accountability for war crimes are unsatisfactory, incomplete, and very, very slow. Will you, for yourselves, and also for us, push for reform of those systems or additions to them that will ensure there can be, because this is in your country's interest, the earliest possible and conclusive determination of where moral right in this war is and where moral wrong is? And supplementary to that, Mr. President, will you consider, to the extent possible, ensuring that accountability mechanisms for war crimes are dealt with by Ukrainians in Ukraine and in the Ukrainian language, remembering that the countries supporting you, if they found themselves in your terrible and unhappy situation, would demand nothing less for themselves? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. It's a quite complicated one, but actually it had all the answers in it. It is very profound. And I know there are a lot of risks as far as the peace formula is concerned. Regarding the institutions, first let me speak about the tribunal. Everything starts with the political unity. The United Nations platform might not necessarily be a universal one, but there's nothing else that would have more countries that could be politically united. As of now, unfortunately, I don't think there's anything else. And we can support the setting up of the tribunal to hold Russian Federation accountable for war crimes. And we're also working on the mechanism to compensate all the damage caused by Russia on the territory of our country, to our country and to our people. This is a major effort. We're working on it. The diplomats, Office of the President, Mr. Austin, Mr. Yermak, Prosecutor General, the Office of the Prosecutor General, everybody is working hard every day to make sure it is up and running. This is a very sophisticated mechanism. And actually, I have to say that other countries, they are cautious, they are afraid of setting up tribunals. You might understand why that it is. It's a matter of responsibility. But before you go and establish something in your country, you need political will and unification. And UN has been very useful in that respect, because any government, country or leader can receive support to that process, and we're working on that as well. We are convinced that the resolutions will be supported and voted for. We're working with certain countries that we see as crucial for the matters of tribunal. We see them as leaders. This is actually the Netherlands. We're working with Mark Rutte. We're working with Mr. Rishi Sunak from the UK, with other countries as well. We are thinking about the compensation mechanism. There has already been a few steps already, and our Baltic friends are very helpful. And Baltic Trio and Poland, they have been supportive along the way. They are supporting us with everything we ask for. Why is it so hard? Because, well, to address the first part of your question, these institutions that you referred to were set up a long time ago. They haven't been through this type of immense aggression, and this bureaucratic system does not give a clear answer to the question of when the justice will be served, when fairness will happen. And for those who lost their homes, the economy, everything, they want justice now, and it makes sense that they want justice and fairness. We have specific examples. We were working on the matter of prisoners of war, and Andrei in particular, and other colleagues, they were taking a great care to check the condition of the prisoners of war. As you've heard, there have been tortures, and now the Red Cross, it's an international institution, they didn't manage to the prisoners of war to check their condition. Are they hardworking, insisting? No. We were insisting and working hard. We were doing our best, paying immense effort to get our men and women out. But to this day, we do not have access to the prisoners of war. And this year, the year is a year of the full-scale war. But we have to remember that the war began in 2014. And we know that there are 125 Crimean Tatars that are political prisoners. What is happening to them now? I remember early into my presidential term, we were returning people back to Ukraine.
Тобто не універсальний мандат, не універсальний доступ, не універсальні організації, але тим не менш поламали в якийсь момент. Організація Об'єднаних Націй на чолі з Гутеррішем, я йому дуже вдячний. Все ж таки, ми встали всі проактивними, ми завели нашу енергію, і це правда. Гутерріш приїжджав, він працював, і разом з турками посередництво зробили цей коридор. І все ж таки наше зерно, і воно поїхало, і це важливо. І тому наполегливість і змінювати інституції. Ну, скажу вам відверто, я дійсно вважаю, що ця війна, вона...
And you know, I am tired to hear one answer from many institutions. They keep saying, we don't have the authority to do it. So, no universal mandate, etc., etc., but nonetheless, the UN, headed by Antonio Guterres, well, in us, we became more proactive. Guterres came to Ukraine, and we helped organize the corridor to transport grain with help of Turkey. So, being persistent and being committed to change institutions is what helps. Actually, this war helps highlight weaknesses in Ukrainian institutions, in the EU, on the continent in general, and international institutions as well. And how do we change them? A different security infrastructure will emerge after the victory in the war. Somebody from Ukrainian media, LBUA. Thank you. Good afternoon. Mr. President, you mentioned China and its views not very pro-Ukrainian. China came up with its peace plan this week. However, we're seeing some actions by China, not very pro-Ukrainian, and we also heard some allegations that China might be supporting weapons to Russia. So what do you think about China's position? Well, I don't think that was China's peace plan. It was not a declaration or resolution. I think that China spoke its mind about the matter. And I actually said it once before. China started talking about Ukraine. And I think this is a good thing. But it actually begs a question. What will these words be followed with? Because the steps that are to be taken, this is what's important, and what these steps are going to lead to for us. Because he's talking about us, China is talking about us. Territorial integrity, well, I think what they are saying looks like respect for territorial integrity, doesn't mention the country, but it's our territorial integrity that has been breached. Nuclear security was mentioned as well. I think this is in line with the interests, global interests and Ukrainian interests. There are some things that may sense to me. There are things that I disagree with. The entire world, I think, disagrees with. But nonetheless, this is at least something. And I think that we would be safe to assume that if there are ideas that are aligned with the idea of respect for international law, territorial integrity, and some security considerations, we need to put that to good use. We need to work on that with China. Why not? Our task is to get everyone together to isolate that somebody. Next question from Azerbaijan.
Вітаю,
Good evening, dear Mr. President. I'm a journalist from Azerbaijan. What is the support to Ukraine from the post-Soviet countries, from Azerbaijan in particular? What specific steps do you anticipate, and what specific steps are you planning to take in internal and external policy? Mr. President, my son asked to take a selfie with you. Would that be okay? We'll start with what your son has asked, and then we'll discuss the question that you posed. Dear colleagues, but this is a bad example. Please, please don't be doing that. So your question was about my assessment of Azerbaijan's support. Well, actually, the answer is in the question. If an Azerbaijani journalist is asking a question in Ukrainian, that means he has made a choice between Russia and Ukraine. Thank you for your support. Thank you. Regarding President Aliyev, we are in touch with him. We communicate with him. We are grateful for support that he's extended to Ukraine, and he respects our sovereignty. I think that's priority number one. He has respect for the territorial integrity of Ukraine. He thinks that Crimea is Ukraine. Thank you. Let's talk to this part of the room. NPR, National Public Radio.
Oh, thank you. Can you hear me? Oh.
Now yes.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
So General Milley says that you can't achieve your goal of kicking all the Russians out of Ukraine. I wanted to see if you think he's right and what that tells you about continued U.S. support and why.
Дуже дякую.
Thank you for this question. First of all, I know General Milley personally. We had a meeting, and I haven't heard that from him. I respect the opinions and views of the military, especially the partners that have been supporting us, that have been leaders in our support. If General Milley really thinks that, I think I would have heard that before. Secondly, support is everything. So if General Milley
з нашої держави, я думаю, він, а від нього це дуже залежить, він повинен пришвидшити постачання зброї. Мені здається, так повинно бути. Що стосується підтримки в цілому Сполучених Штатів, якщо ви не проти, я додам. Я вважаю, найголовніша відповідь приїзд президента Байдена.
I think the most important was the visit of the President Biden. There's weapons, other things, and it's up to the President and Congress, but first of all, it's support of the public. And I saw that American people, they support us. During my visit to Washington, D.C., I saw people with Ukrainian flags in the street. So I know that the U.S. support is very, very important. And support is weapons, humanitarian assistance, etc., etc. That's one thing. And there's another thing, believing in our victory. And this is what President Biden's visit was about. And President Biden came to us. And General Milley hasn't been here yet. Sky News, Deborah, please.
Thank you very much. Deborah Haynes from Sky News. Do you believe that Ukraine can achieve victory on the battlefield? Or do you believe that ultimately you're going to have to negotiate, maybe even compromise, maybe even talk to Vladimir Putin? And if I may ask a second question, please. Around 20 of NATO's member states have increased their defence spending or made pledges to increase their defence spending following the full-scale invasion of Ukraine last year. Would you like to see all 30 member states increase their defence spending, given the need to continue to support Ukraine? And that does include the UK, which has yet to do that. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. If I forget something, please make sure to remind me. This important thing. 20 countries is a lot, but there are so many countries around the world who started to increase their defense budget. So this is a complicated matter and requires a complicated answer. There was a previous question: how do you reform institutional security globally? And you are talking about increase in defense budgets. That's the answer. The war in Ukraine gave rise to the resetting. Everybody understood that the systems are not perfect, that we need something more powerful. And I'm not talking about ammunition. There's a lot spent on cybersecurity, information independence, etc., etc. UAVs, IT, cutting-edge technologies. Everybody's clear that there's no cookie-cutter approach. Probably other expenses are increased as well, but bottom line is that what we're seeing now is the security system being reformed, and I think this is the right step to take. And everybody saw what we could expect from the Russian Federation. And this brings us to the idea of compromise and negotiations. And we all saw that nobody ran to buy flowers. Instead, everybody went to buy weapons. Nobody wants to develop business with the Russian Federation. More and more sanctions appear. Sometimes sanctions hurt, but everybody's clear now that they're making you dependent on Russian gas, and if you are that dependent, then you're gonna get cold eventually, because at some point they might start thinking that they want to have their people in your country, they want a part of your territory, and then people realize that we need independence, not just on paper. We need real independence to defend our people, because this is what that one person has done with independent Ukraine, who was a neighbor and even, so to say, a friend yesterday. So this brings me back to the first part of your question. After everybody saw that they kill people, that they torture people, and they're not even trying to hide their attacks. They're talking about nuclear matters. They decided to take Iranian drones and kill civilians. And those civilians did not have guns in their hands. They had their children in their hands. And seeing this picture of the world, do you think we Ukrainians could sit at this to negotiate with all of this? I don't know how to call that. We call this phenomena Russism. I don't have a better word to put it. So that's the answer. We need to start from scratch. We need to go back to what was violated. Our right to live on our land needs to be respected. Leave our territory, withdraw, stop shelling us, stop killing civilians, stop destroying our infrastructure, energy sector, potable water, stop air strikes on the cities, stop killing dogs, cats, animals, stop burning the forest. So you go ahead and stop doing all of that, and only after that we'll tell you what format will be used to diplomatically put an end to it.
Okay, now the Ukrainian Pravda, please, from this part of the audience. Good afternoon, Roman Krovets, Ukrainska Pravda. I'd like to go back to the major topic of this press conference, that's the year of the war. It's time for some intermediate conclusions, and my question is sort of personal. It's composed of three components. First, can you recall your personal, the most horrible day and the horrible night of the full-scale war? And second, we all humans, we can all make mistakes. Now, what's your biggest mistake over the period of the full-scale war? And third, who, over this period of the full-scale war, among your team, who sort of disappointed you? Thank you. Okay, I'd like to start with the one who disappointed me. Sorry, because who disappointed? All those who left on the 24th of February, all those who left Kiev, all those who were leaving cities and towns, all those who were supposed to fight for the country, who had to take care of the security of this country. So all these people have disappointed me. Now, my largest mistake, I don't know. I think there was some of them. Because I'm working from early morning to late night. I'm a living person. And no matter how someone might think of that, so I make choices, so I am convinced that I'm making mistakes from time to time. What's important is that for me not to have any fatal mistakes, because I'm a guarantor of the Constitution, I'm the guarantor of the national security. So what's important is that I won't make any fatal mistakes. Now, with God's help, haven't made any mistakes like that. Now, what was the horrible day, or the horrible night, the most horrible night? Over this year, I think Bucha. What I saw, the moment we've deoccupied Bucha, it was horrible.